One morning in June in the suburbs of Rio de Janeiro, locals were horrified to discover the body of a young woman inside an abandoned house naked, wrapped in an old tarp. Around her were two snarling pit bulls. The corpse had been mauled beyond recognition. The victim was Marcel Julia Araujo da Silva, only 18 years old. That gruesome scene marked the beginning of a feminicidio, a gender-based crime that shook Brazil. But what made the public even more outraged was that the main suspect was someone close to her, a man Marcel had once trusted. The case didn't just expose the cruelty lurking behind toxic relationships. It also served as a wake-up call about the silent tragedies many young women face daily. Today we'll look into the shocking case that shook Brazil. The case of Marcel Julia Araujo da Silva, the 18-year-old girl who was lured to a familiar man's home under the pretense of receiving a Valentine's gift, and then mysteriously disappeared. As usual, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to support my channel. Thank you so much. In mid-June 2025, just a few days after Dia dos Namorados, Brazil's Valentine's Day, June 12th, a chilling crime occurred in the Pavuna district, a northern suburb of Rio de Janeiro. It should have been a time of love and sweetness, but for 18-year-old Marcela Julia Araujo da Silva, it was the beginning of a nightmare. She went missing suddenly, and 3 days later her body was found in a state no one could have imagined. Pavuna is a rough area where low-income neighborhoods are packed between old factories. The Beira Rio area where Marcela was found is a comunidad, a riverside community where locals survive through small trade and all know each other by face. Life in its dusty streets, makeshift eateries, and modest homes flows quietly and simply. Among the residents was a Chinese man known as Zhao, who sold stir-fried noodles from a pushcart around Jardim America Square. But this seemingly quiet place became the scene of a horrifying crime. Brazil is on red alert for gender-based violence, with an average of 4 women killed daily, most by acquaintances or former partners. Rio de Janeiro consistently ranks among the highest in feminicidio rates nationwide. Against that backdrop, Marcel's disappearance couldn't be ignored. On Saturday afternoon, June 14th, after 3 days of fruitless searching, Marcel's family decided to take action. Her aunt Claudia Luciana recalled, "I had a feeling she was being held somewhere. We had to do something." The family started reviewing footage from security cameras around Jardim America, the last place Marcel was believed to have visited. One video left them speechless, Marcel riding a bike into a man's house and never coming out. The next morning, that same man was seen pushing a cart covered with a blue tarp out of his house, a chilling match with rumors about the corpse wrapped in a tarp found in Pavuna. They split up to follow the lead. Someone remembered the man's vacant house near Beira Rio. When they arrived, the door was locked tight. From inside, the pit bulls barked furiously, and a suffocating stench of death filled the air. Aline, Marcel's sister-in-law, didn't hesitate. She contacted Barbara, a friend who once had a key to feed the dogs. After sedating the 2 pit bulls, the group slipped inside. None of them were prepared for what they were about to see. On the second floor of the unfinished house, behind a pile of broken bricks, lay the naked body of a woman wrapped in a blue tarp and hastily dumped in a corner. Aline burst into tears upon recognizing the hair and familiar silver bracelet. It was her sister-in-law, Marcel. The body had decomposed severely and had been mauled so badly it was unrecognizable. In total shock, one family member screamed, "My God, how could he do this to her?" He was the very man Marcel had trusted, the one she went to meet on the final night of her life. That horrific discovery not only devastated Marcel's family, but also launched a long-running investigation where the truth would gradually be uncovered through details that had seemed buried in darkness. Just minutes after receiving the report, officers from the 41st Military Police Station quickly arrived at the scene, a half-built house tucked in the Beira Rio area of Pavuna. The flashing lights of patrol cars lit up the dark space, turning it into a chilling crime scene of a brutal murder. Inside, Marcel's naked body was found curled up, tightly wrapped in a torn blue tarp. Dark streaks of dried blood covered her, and her body was riddled with deep bite marks, the result of 2 pit bulls that had been left loose to guard the house. These aggressive dogs were not only living witnesses, but also destructive agents of forensic evidence. They were taken away by animal rescue officers that very night, and investigators even considered examining their stomach contents for any human remains, if there were any. There was little blood at the scene. A detail that immediately raised suspicion among the investigators was the victim murdered elsewhere and brought here for disposal. However, faint bruising on Marcel's neck became visible under the light, strongly suggesting she had been strangled, either manually or with a ligature. There were no knife or gunshot wounds on the body, further supporting the theory that she had been killed by strangulation. A quiet, clean, and calculated method. The ground floor of the house revealed another important clue, a metal cart, the type typically used by street vendors in the area. On it were a few strands of long black hair and drag marks scattered across the dusty tile floor. These matched the surveillance footage that showed the suspect using the cart to transport Marcel's body wrapped in a tarp from his house to the abandoned one. Clues weren't limited to the house's interior. Under flashlight beams, the forensic team carefully followed clear tire tracks embedded in the ground. They stretched from Jardim America, where the suspect lived, to Beira Rio, where the body was found. Along the way, investigators discovered scattered personal items, a pink women's flip-flop, a torn piece of a t-shirt, and near the riverbank, Marcel's bicycle, thrown into the shallow water. That bicycle served as the final piece of evidence confirming that the victim had arrived at the suspect's home on that fateful night, and never left on her own 2 feet. Every detail at the scene seemed to recount a chillingly meticulous plan. The killer didn't just take a life. He calculated how to dispose of it, erase the evidence, even using the dogs to process what remained. This was no impulsive crime committed in a fit of rage, but a deliberate, premeditated act of inhuman coldness. In the first report sent to the capital's homicide unit on the night of June 14th, one investigator wrote a short but chilling assessment. The killer didn't just murder her. He wanted to erase her from this world. A haunting question took hold of the investigative team. Who could plan such a heartless act? And what could drive someone to end the life of an 18-year-old girl in such a cruel manner? Amid the gruesome evidence and chilling forensic finds, investigators knew that to uncover the truth, they had to start from the person closest to the crime, the victim herself. Marcel Julia Araujo. Da Silva wasn't just a body wrapped in a tarp, an anonymous name in a lengthy police report. She was a person. A young woman who had just turned 18, who had a loving family, unfinished dreams, and a heart that once believed in goodness. To understand why Marcel was targeted and murdered, investigators needed to understand who she was, how she lived, and what kind of relationship she had with the person who ultimately took her life. And from her personal records, a blurry portrait of the killer's motive and nature began to emerge. Marcel Julia Araujo da Silva, born in 2006, was the youngest child in a working-class family, living in the Iraja district in the northern part of Rio de Janeiro. Her family was not wealthy, but they were close-knit and loving. Marcel lived with her mother and siblings in a small home where everyone pulled together with optimism and familial warmth. Marcel was petite, with a bright face and eyes that sparkled with curiosity. She was friendly, approachable, often helped neighbors, and was always the one to start conversations when the neighborhood gathered on hot afternoons in front of their homes. Having just graduated from high school, Marcel dreamed of studying makeup artistry, not only because she loved beauty, but also to earn money and help her mother care for the younger children in the family. At 18, she still enjoyed simple pleasures like biking around the neighborhood, chatting with friends, and especially snacking. Every day after school, she would stop by local street vendors to grab some stir-fried noodles, fried pastries, or sugarcane juice. And it was exactly that habit that led Marcel to get acquainted with a man named Zhao Hu Qiu, nicknamed Zhao, a Chinese native who had been living in Brazil for many years. Around 2020, Zhao opened a yakisoba cart at Jardim America Square, near where Marcel's family lived. With hot noodles and affordable prices, Zhao quickly became a familiar face in the neighborhood. To teenage girls like Marcel, the noodle cart was like a cheerful hangout spot. A bond gradually formed between them. Marcel often helped Zhao take phone orders and translated simple Portuguese phrases when Brazilian customers came to eat. She called him Uncle Zhao or Bro Zhao, a half-joking, neighborly kind of nickname. As for Zhao, he appeared to be extremely kind. Sometimes he delivered noodles right to Marcel's house occasionally, even giving extra portions to her mother. Small karaoke BBQ parties at his vacant house in Pavuna, the very house that would later become the crime scene, often included Marcel and her group of friends as regular guests. But behind that friendly demeanor, many people gradually noticed that the way Zhao looked at Marcel wasn't quite right. There was an admiration that went beyond innocent affection. Some close friends even subtly warned her, but Marcel just laughed it off. To her, Zhao was simply a kind, older man, nothing more. She had a boyfriend her age, was passionately in love and dreaming of the future. Little did she know she had already entered the sights of a predator disguised as a helpful neighbor. On the night of June 11, 2025, Brazil's Dia dos Namorados, or Valentine's Day, Zhao unexpectedly texted Marcel to come by his house to receive a surprise gift. According to her close friend, he promised a cute gift basket for a special girl on this romantic occasion. It sounded appealing, especially to an 18-year-old just stepping into adulthood, always loving sweet surprises, and Marcel let her guard down. Maybe she thought Zhao was just being nice like an older brother. Maybe she didn't want to refuse and seem rude. Or maybe she simply trusted in a 5-year relationship close enough to visit his home and call him family. She left home alone near midnight wearing a white t-shirt and simple jeans. No messages were left for her mother. No one in her family imagined that would be the last time they'd see Marcel alive. A few hours later, when her phone went strangely silent, her friends began to worry. The next day, her family panicked and began searching. But Marcel's disappearance wasn't just a random missing persons case, it was the beginning of a meticulously planned crime. And the one who set the trap was none other than the trusted neighbor. As soon as the report came in that Marcel's body had been found in the abandoned house in Pavuna, the capital homicide unit led by Police Chief Breno Carneiro immediately took action. The gruesome crime scene and testimonies from loved ones quickly pointed the investigation in one direction. The last known person to have contact with Marcel was Zhao Huqiu, nicknamed Zhao, the familiar noodle vendor. The portrait of the foreign man began to emerge, no longer as friendly as people once believed. Zhao Huqiu, 35 years old, Chinese national, immigrated to Brazil about 5 to 6 years prior. He lived in Pavuna, a poor suburb of Rio de Janeiro, making a living by selling yakisoba from a pushcart. Small-built and not fluent in Portuguese, Zhao had nonetheless earned goodwill with his helpful demeanor, especially with Marcel's family. In reality, he had been harboring a sick obsession with Marcel for years, ever since meeting her when she was just 13 or 14. According to her friends, Zhao wasn't just fond of her, he was obsessed. He kept photos of her on his phone and would show jealousy when she was seen with her boyfriend. Some neighborhood girls even said he had invited them to drink and lured them to karaoke parties at his home, where shady behavior allegedly involved drugs and alcohol used to pressure them into sex. When rejected romantically, Zhao's desire for control and his wounded pride turned him into a deliberate murderer. He chose Valentine's Day to lure Marcel to his house with a promise of a gift, then strangled her to death. The body was wrapped in a tarp, once a curtain in his home, and hidden in an abandoned house where Zhao had already unleashed guard dogs to dispose of the corpse in the most savage way. With no criminal record, no one suspected that a kind-looking street food vendor could orchestrate such a calculated and cold-blooded plan. Investigators determined that Zhao was an extremely dangerous type of criminal because he was so ordinary and knew exactly how to hide his true face behind fake kindness. By posing as a kind neighbor, Zhao stayed out of suspicion until the full spotlight turned on his crime. Police searched Zhao's house in Jardim America, the place where security cameras had captured Marcel riding her bike at midnight. Beneath layers of dust and on the cold tiled floor, evidence began to surface: strands of black hair, long drag marks from the bedroom to the back door, likely the path the killer used to pull the body. On the back door, forensic experts found blood-streaked fingerprints matching Marcel's DNA, as if she had been desperately trying to escape. In the bedroom, investigators quickly noticed a curtain missing from the window. According to witnesses, it was the green fabric used to wrap the victim's body. That curtain had become the tool to conceal the corpse, and the familiar metal cart, once part of Zhao's street food stall, had now become the means to transport a body. Behind the house, police also seized blood-stained clothing, plastic zip ties, duct tape, and 2 phones. But Marcel's phone was missing. That missing phone seemed like a deliberate attempt to erase all contact and final evidence. At the Rio Forensic Institute, the autopsy results shattered any fabricated defense. The cause of death was determined to be mechanical asphyxiation from strangulation, consistent with the bruising around her neck and hyoid bone damage. There were no stab wounds or skull trauma, meaning she had been killed directly and brutally, either by hand or by a cord. A small amount of alcohol and drugs were found in her blood, suggesting she had been coaxed into consuming stimulants, reinforcing the theory that Zhao had planned to sexually exploit her. Though the body had been severely mauled by dogs, making it difficult to confirm sexual assault, her complete nudity, the restraint marks, and the midnight meeting all strongly supported the theory of sexual violence leading to murder. Testimonies from Marcel's friends and family became crucial pieces in reconstructing the plan. Marcel had excitedly told her friends about a special Valentine's gift promised by Zhao. That seemingly sweet gesture turned out to be the trap that led to her death. The bride Aline and her friend Barbara, who had a key to Zhao's house in Pavuna, also recounted how they found Marcel's body, confirming that she had been lured into the killer's own home. Importantly, a housemate of Zhao testified that he heard loud noises and muffled cries from Zhao's room on the night of the crime. Too afraid to intervene, he was later charged for failing to assist someone in danger, but his statement played a crucial role in confirming the presence of both the victim and the suspect during the crime. Finally, the security camera, the silent but most honest witness, recorded everything: Marcel riding her bike to Zhao's house at 2:00 a.m. By 7:00 a.m. the next morning, Zhao was seen pushing a cart covered with a green tarp out of his house. He returned with the cart empty, moving quietly as if nothing had happened. These images left no room for denial. On June 15th, an emergency arrest warrant for Zhao Huqiu was approved across all of Rio de Janeiro. But when police stormed in, he had vanished. Using phone location data and interagency cooperation, investigators traced his path. He was fleeing to Sao Paulo, where the Chinese community was more densely populated. On June 16th, Zhao was arrested in Carapicuíba, a suburban area hundreds of kilometers from Rio. When handcuffed, he bowed his head, did not resist, and looked visibly exhausted. It was a scene that made the frail small man seem completely at odds with the brutal crime he had committed. Under overwhelming evidence, Zhao confessed to strangling Marcel, but tried to twist the narrative and blame the situation. He claimed that they had drunk alcohol and used drugs, then fell asleep. In the morning, he found her not breathing and panicked, so he disposed of the body. He denied any sexual motives, trying to paint a naive story about an accident and fear. However, the forceful strangulation, meticulous disposal plan, forensic evidence, images, and witness statements shattered all excuses. One investigator remarked, he thought that if the dogs ate the body, the crime would be buried. But no. He left behind every trace. On May 1, 2025, the DHC team officially completed the investigation and recommended charging Zhao Huqiu with gender-based murder and illegal concealment of a corpse. His housemate, despite witnessing the incident, was also charged for failing to help the victim. The hefty case file, filled with DNA evidence, security footage, witness testimonies, and physical evidence, was handed over to the Rio de Janeiro Public Prosecutor's Office. The case was entering the litigation phase. But for Marcel's family and millions of Brazilians, they weren't just waiting for a harsh sentence, they needed confirmation that justice still existed, even for crimes committed by someone once trusted. On May 30, 2025, the Fifth Criminal Court of Rio de Janeiro officially opened the first trial for Zhao Huqiu, who was accused of gender-based murder and unlawful concealment of a corpse. Though no longer breaking news, the case still shocked the public with its sickening brutality, and because the victim was an 18-year-old girl. In court, Zhao Huqiu appeared disheveled, thin, and visibly worn down after more than 3 months in detention. He remained silent throughout the opening session, refusing to apologize to the victim's family. On the other side, Marcel's mother, siblings, and friends sat quietly, their eyes burning with emotion. Mrs. Luciana, Marcel's mother, had to be helped into the courtroom. She just wanted to receive a gift. Who knew it would end in tragedy? She sobbed. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence: surveillance footage of Marcel's last journey, strangulation marks, DNA matches at the scene, witness statements, cries for help during the night, and clear indications that Zhao had meticulously prepared his crime. The prosecutor described the murder as intentional, calculated, and clearly driven by the defendant's sick desires. The defense attorney tried to argue it was an accident caused by panic and asked for leniency due to alleged mental instability. However, the entire argument was dismissed by the court, especially since the investigation clearly showed that disposing of the body by feeding it to animals could not be a spontaneous act. After 3 tense days of trial, the court sentenced Zhao Huqiu to 38 years in prison, 30 years for gender-based murder, and 8 years for illegal disposal of a corpse. The verdict was delivered amid applause and tears. Marcel's family embraced each other and broke down after nearly 4 months of emotional torment. Meanwhile, the defendant, Zhao, remained silent, showing no reaction as he was handcuffed and led out of the courtroom. The trial ended, but the echoes of the case still linger in the hearts of Rio's citizens. Marcel's case was not only a personal tragedy, but also a symbol, a warning about morality, gender-based violence, about kind faces hiding demonic intentions, and the necessity for a justice system that shows no leniency. The passing of Marcel Julia Araujo da Silva, a bright 18-year-old girl, left a deep scar in Brazilian society. Not because the crime was too brutal, not because he was a stranger, not some shadow in the night, but because he was a familiar neighbor, Uncle Zhao, the kind man everyone in the neighborhood used to admire. The Brazilian media dubbed it the Bloody Valentine's Gift, highlighting not only the alarming rise in gender crimes, but also the fragility of trust and the lack of education about safe boundaries in social relationships. Marcel was not the first victim, and heartbreakingly may not be the last deceived by someone familiar. This event ignited a massive reaction on social media. The hashtag Justice for Marcel climbed to the top of Twitter in Brazil for several days, attracting millions of shares. Numerous small protests broke out in Rio de Janeiro, calling for stronger protections for women and children against harassment, gender-based violence, and emotional manipulation by older individuals. The Brazilian Ministry of Justice was later forced to review its monitoring system for immigrants displaying unusual behavior in local communities. Violence doesn't always come from strangers, it can come cloaked in kindness, and sometimes kindness itself can be a mask for dark intentions. Women, especially young girls, need to be equipped with knowledge to recognize signs of manipulation and toxic control behaviors hidden beneath a facade of care. More importantly, every community from working-class neighborhoods to upscale areas needs to build a culture of vigilance and encourage people to speak up when they see something wrong rather than staying silent out of fear of trouble. With everything revealed after the case, Zhao's true nature is clear: a disturbed narcissist who liked to control others through fake kindness and who was willing to kill when his ego was hurt. What makes him terrifying is not just the cruelty of the crime, but how it lurked right inside an ordinary neighborhood behind the face of someone familiar and once welcomed. Marcel left in her youth with dreams and memories of cycling around her neighborhood. But she also left behind a lasting reminder that justice must stay sharp, and society must never forget what happened so that it never happens again. What are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments below. And before you go, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of my future videos.